all those that organised today's event. Can we say thank you to all of those volunteers that did so much to put this event on? And thank you to all of the unions that helped to finance it and support it and mobilise for this event. And I want to say a personal huge thank you to Mark Sawatka and his wonderful new heart. Mark has been through some terrible strains and stresses, and whilst he was there in Papworth, he was keeping up with everything that's going on, and it was a delight to be in touch with him, but also to hear from him that his deep commitment and concern, not just for the members of his union, but all those that are victims of austerity all over this country. Mark, thank you for what you said today and what you've done on all the other days. I thought Parliament Square was absolutely full 2 years ago when we met here in the aftermath of the 2015 election. I didn't think you could get any more people into Parliament Square, except today when there are more than ever. And when we met 2 years ago in the aftermath of the general election, Tory government in office, Tory government hell-bent on privatisation, on cuts and austerity, we declared a declaration that we were going to fight austerity and the economic thinking that is behind it. And that is exactly what we've been doing over the past 2 years. And it's been my privilege during those 2 years to fight 2 leadership campaigns and 1 general election campaign. And I thank all of those people that showed such friendship and such support during those campaigns. All those people that came together in a view that the world could be very different. My only regret is that we didn't quite succeed in winning the general election campaign. But I tell you this, I'm proud of the manifesto we put forward, I'm proud of the campaign that we won, I'm proud of the support we received. And that result on June the 8th was the biggest ever increase in the vote for the Labour Party since 1945. And a campaign that was written off at the beginning by the commentariat, by the broadsheet newspapers, by most, not all, but most of the tabloid newspapers, written off as a walk in the park for the Tories. Something happened. And that something was people registering to vote who had never registered before, was all those millions that got involved in the social media campaign of saying the world doesn't have to be like this. And it was those tens and tens of thousands that came out to rallies all over the country in ever greater numbers as the campaign went on, saying, we are a people, we're united, we are determined, and we're not going to let ourselves be divided or austerity divide us. And when Parliament over there met after the election, there was one side that looked like they'd lost, and they were the ones sitting on the government benches, and the other side that was cock-a-hoop with our increase in support and our determination to force another election as soon as we can. Because for all their bluster, the fundamental issues simply do not go away. In Britain, 6 million people earn less than the living wage. 4 million children are living in poverty. 4 million people are also living in fuel poverty. 1 million access points a year to food banks all over Britain, including people working in the public sector. And whilst the Tories might think they stitched up a cosy deal with the DUP, which suddenly values every DUP MP at 100 million a year, more than any Premiership footballer, And if you'd seen them playing football, you would not offer 100 million for any of them. Or even all of them. And that cosy deal put together in order to do what? Vote down the Labour proposal that we end the public sector pay cap. And so I say to any public sector workers in Northern Ireland or anywhere else, don't have any illusions in these people. When they started the austerity programme, they meant it, and they meant it to carry on, and carry on with a growing gap between the richest and poorest in our society, with a growing impoverishment of those at the bottom, a growing underfunding of local government, health, education, and all the other things that we all need in a civilised society. If you drew a map of Britain and coloured in with red all the poorest parts of the country and overlaid it with another map of those that have had the biggest cuts in public expenditure, whose local authorities have been bled dry, one would obliterate the other. The austerity programme is brutal and selective to the poorest people and the poorest parts of our communities. And if ever there was an object lesson about what austerity really means and what poverty really means in Britain, look at the disaster of Grenfell Tower. Not one of those people need or should have died. Every single one of them could and should have been protected. But somewhere along the line, there was a whole system that led to them living in a fire trap. I take my hat off. I take every salute possible given to the fire brigade, the ambulance workers, the paramedics and the police who went in there to try and save life. They went in with incredible bravery because of their determination to save life in that desperate towering inferno. A towering inferno where the poor died in the richest borough in Britain. It's simply wrong. And the hypocrisy, and the utter hypocrisy of government ministers and others who queued up in the chamber over there in the House of Commons to heap praise on the emergency services the following day to cut their wages by refusing to lift the pay cap. The hypocrisy is absolutely unbelievable. But the election campaign showed something else. 2 years ago, we were looking for an alternative to an economic strategy which essentially said that the financial crisis of 2008 has to be paid for by balancing the books on the backs of the poor, most vulnerable and most needy in our society. This election campaign said something very, very different. John McDonnell spoke earlier and set out the kind of alternative economic agenda that does increase taxes for the top 5%, that does increase corporate taxation in order to change the life chances of the majority of people in this country. A society that wants to succeed and be at ease with itself would invest more in the life chances of our children, starting with the very youngest, so that those not yet old enough to go to school get at least 30 hours a week in a good environment, playing together, learning together, socialising together, growing up together, getting that message of what a community can be like. And those, when they go on to primary school, not being in oversized and supersized classes, those in primary school getting a decent school meal, getting teachers they need, getting the education they need in the space they need, and their head teachers not stressed out by trying to collect money from the public to balance the school books. An intelligent society would invest in our education and all of our children, not cut them and not stress out our teachers and our children. And you know what? Education is about learning, of course. It is about safety, of course. It is about being in a secure environment, of course. but it's also about giving our children, giving our community the space to imagine, the space to enjoy, and the space to play music and art. And that's why I'm so determined that we will invest in arts and culture education in the future for the pupil arts premium. And the lottery, and it is a lottery of the postcode, which effectively decides the life chances of a child almost at birth, must end. How is it that we're deciding the life chances of a child at 2, 3 and 4, knowing which ones are likely to end up in university and which ones are not? It means spending public money in all parts of the country, not denying the chances in the poorest, often post-industrial areas of Britain. And for older children who want to go and get an apprenticeship, want to go on and achieve in life their skills, their ambitions, their dreams, too many of them are foiled in that because they can't afford it. Foiled by college fees, foiled by the loss of EMA, foiled by the huge university tuition fees that they're being charged. I say instead, tax the corporates that we can educate the young. Because the effect is already so very obvious. Fewer and fewer young working class students applying to go to university, more and more dropping out. Universities once again returning to the elitism they were many, many decades ago, before there was a degree of enlightenment in attitudes. And so I simply say this: why can't we do what so many other societies do? Invest in our young people, invest in our future, invest in their hopes, not saddle them with debt at the end of it. But life isn't just about education, it's also about how you run an economy. An economy that is deregulated, that has so many people working on 0 hours contracts, on insecure jobs, on bogus self-employment, with no rights at work for the first months or if not years, with charges for having the temerity to take their case to an employment tribunal, is simply not a fair or just society. And I was very proud of the announcement made on May Day by Becky Long-Bailey, our Shadow Business Secretary, of a workers' rights charter that we would bring in at the first opportunity. Rights to decent pay, rights to representation, rights to safety at work. So no more the bonfire of regulations, no more the bonfire of regulations of health and safety and representation. Let's instead have an opportunity where people do have decency, rights at work, and rights to join a trade union, and rights to be represented by a trade union, and the repeal of the Trade Union Act. And have a government that wants to invest in the economy through the National Investment Bank, so that we do have those high-tech, sustainable jobs, so we do invest in green energy technology for the future, so we give everybody a chance, not the grotesque inequalities and injustice of modern Britain. That is what the election campaign was about, and that's what the next election campaign is going to be about as soon as it comes. Grenfell taught us a message. Grenfell taught us a message about housing. Taught us a message that so many people are frightened of living in tower blocks, frightened of the danger, frightened of the insecurity. And so many sleeping on our streets and trying to survive. And so many growing up, children growing up in overcrowded, damp, overpriced, private rented accommodation. That is the face of modern Britain with the Tories. That is the face of modern Britain with austerity. End austerity and invest in the future. Invest in decent housing. And opportunities for everyone else. Because the election campaign was presented as a kind of walk in the park for the Tories. And it all changed. It all changed when people began to realise that the social care crisis is a crisis made by this government. Is 1 million people not getting the social care they need? Many women having to give up their life chances, career opportunities or jobs just to care for a needy relative or somebody that should be getting the social care that should be provided by all the rest of us. And so the campaign turned. It turned because something different was on offer, and people began to realise that we don't have to go down the road of the neocon economics that we've been taught for the past 40 years, that you allow the rich to become impossibly rich, you allow them to put as much money as they want to in tax havens, and somehow or other, by some magic money tree that's planted on some tax haven somewhere, there's going to be a bit of trickle down that will help the rest of the community. I'll tell you what, the only magic money tree I know is the one that allows people not to pay the taxes they ought to be paying. And so we fought the election on the kind of society we want to live in. And nothing epitomises that more than the attitude to healthcare, pensions and social care in our society. Those that came home from the Second World War, those that had been through the Depression of the 1930s, those that had seen the utter misery of the means test of the 1930s, came home determined to do something different. And they built the National Health Service, the principle of healthcare free at the point of use. These days, the Tory party dare not say it's against the National Health Service because it's become such an emblematic symbol of everything that's good about our society. But instead, they dice it up, slice it up, cut it up, and sell it off to the private sector. I want an NHS that's publicly owned, publicly run, and those in it are publicly employed. So that health inequality is also challenged. Take a bus ride across any major city anywhere in Britain. Life expectancy gets lower and lower the poorer the area you are, and higher the richer the area you're in. Surely our health service must work for all and give everyone a decent chance to recover from conditions and illnesses, but also a society that tackles injustice and inequality at its root and at its core. And so I leave you with this message today. We will fight for a Brexit from the European Union that protects jobs, living standards and workers' rights. We will fight to protect the rights of European nationals living here so they get full rights, and we will develop that partnership of the future. We will also campaign for an international system and a foreign policy that puts human rights, environmental justice and democracy at the heart of a foreign policy that is based on human rights and justice. But above all, I simply say this, those that stood before us to gain us the right to vote, to gain women the right to vote, to gain a degree of social justice in society, that walked the walk to support the miners during the great miners' strike of 84, 85, those that stood for justice on so many occasions, eventually are vindicated. Vindicated in the way the Hillsborough families have been vindicated in the way that so many others have been. And what this election campaign, this anti-austerity movement, this current mood in British politics has done is unleashed the ideas and the imagination, unleashed that day-to-day conversation on every street corner, every cafe and every pub of how differently this country could be run. The Tories are in retreat. Austerity is in retreat. The economic arguments of austerity are in retreat. It's those of social justice, of unity, of people coming together to oppose racism and all those that would divide us that are the ones that are moving forward. This is the age of imagination. This is the age in which we will achieve that decency and social justice that we all crave. That is what brings us here together today. That's what keeps us here. together today, and that will take us forward in the future to build that better society that we want for our children and all those